As you can see, I am on location at our Holy Spirit Life Learning Center. And if it's summertime in Chicago, you know that we are at the Summer Peace Camp. Today, we will be taking a look back into the tail part of last week's episode that we weren't able to show you due to certain time constraints. We interviewed Father Adam MacDonald and we talked about the topic of forward faith. Moving forward, even though we don't exactly know fully what God has in store on the journey. Today, he will be answering a particular question that pertains to when he really felt like God was calling him, when he really knew that God wanted him to become a Divine Word Missionary Priest. It's an awesome opportunity for us to just sit back and hear from someone who not only serves within vocations, but has walked that discernment journey himself. My name is Andrew Dixon. Welcome to Christ Over Coffee. As you know, we spoke to Mr. Lynn U-Haul in our last two previous episodes. They were absolutely wonderful and eye-opening from a vocations perspective. We went into depth with him about his fork in the road moment. He began early on in formation to become a Divine Word Missionary Priest. However, God would have different plans for his life. And upon leaving formation, he actually entered into a marriage with his now wife, and he's also a father, while also still serving in the Society of the Divine Word, but on a vocation level, right? So it's totally awesome how God worked all of that out. But for someone like yourself who's been a Divine Word Missionary Priest for so long, right? When did you sense that God was calling you to religious life? Was there a moment where you sensed God was saying, Adam, I want you to be a priest? And, did you sense that? When did you sense it? How did that all come about?
Thank you for the question, Andrew. It's really a profound invitation to think about the last 28, almost 29 years in vows as a Divine Word missionary and 23 years as a Divine Word priest. And my answer might surprise you in terms of what was that sort of turning point or that fork in the road. It actually came in the form of a serious illness. When I was in temporary vows, I was participating in something called CTP, which stands for our Cross-Cultural Training Program. The idea basically is that for our men in temporary vows who live in the house that I will now be superior of, so back in the day when I was a student here, we were undertaking a 4-year graduate degree in theology at the Catholic Theological Union here in Hyde Park. And halfway through that degree program, we want our men to have an experience, a firsthand, hands-on experience of mission. And so with the first 2 years of our degree completed, we boldly go overseas, spend the first year of our experience learning the language of the people we will be serving, getting acclimatized to the country and its culture. And then a second year we spend being assigned to do pastoral ministry. So it's a wonderful component of our program that takes all of the theory that we're learning and translate it into how do we apply that theory in real life situations. So I was undertaking that program in the central Philippines, and viewers who've been with us for previous episodes may recall my sharing about my great love for the Philippines and her people and culture. And so the not as pleasant side of my experience was about a year plus into the 2 years of my time there, I was assigned to my pastoral ministry. I had completed my language studies. I was assigned to a more remote island of the Philippines, a little lesser developed. The island where I was assigned was then and remains now home to a very significant population of indigenous Filipinos or tribal Filipinos, specifically the Hmongyan people, native to the island of Mindoro in the Philippines. And so in the process of ministering among and with the Hmongyan people, for the first time in my life, this city boy from Flint, Michigan, by way of rural Iowa and inner city Chicago, who had no experience of climbing mountains, mind you, ended up climbing the mountains to visit the villages of the Hmongyan people. And in the process of doing so, I talked about that acclimatization process, found out that climbing mountains for me in the middle of the tropical heat was a little taxing, and I would sweat profusely. And the locals, the people who live there and know much better than me, gave me all kinds of tips of how to stay healthy and what to do to take care of myself. And of course, I came as the missionary who, sent by God to bring Christ to the people. And I proceeded to ignore much of the wisdom that was shared, thinking that I knew best, right? And so, to my detriment, I was sweating profusely. And I resisted the advice of, changing clothes frequently, making sure the sweat didn't dry on my body, maybe having a towel draped over my back and, attached to my collar that could catch the sweat on my body. So no, I'm fine. Well, as you might imagine, some time went on, and after these repeated incidents of sweating profusely and letting the sweat dry on my body, I became very ill. And of course, I was in denial that it was anything more than just a cough or a cold. Well, it got to the point that I was extremely pale, I was very weak, and I was basically compelled to go to the hospital by my beloved brothers, much to my protest. And it turns out that I had developed pneumonia. So my lungs had filled with fluid from this process of climbing mountains, sweating, the sweat drying, sweating again, the sweat drying. So over time, it developed into pneumonia. So I ended up being in the hospital for 10 days. And interestingly enough, the hospital where I was cared for was run by none other than the Holy Spirit Missionary Sisters. So a shout out to the Holy Spirit Missionary Sisters who run Lourdes Hospital to this day in the Santa Mesa section of Manila, Philippines. And the sisters took such good care of me. So I'm literally indebted to the sisters for bringing me back to health. So where I'm going with this is to say that there was a fork in the road. There was a decision moment, a point of decision where the days that I was in the hospital, those 10 days were okay. I had plenty of sisters coming to make sure that I ate whether I wanted to or not. I had doctors, I had nurses, I had visitors checking in on me. It's like, give me a little space here. And when I got the space that I wanted, I got a lot of it. The nights were tremendously long and tremendously lonely. And in those lonely, long nights of that 10-day hospital stay, I was visited by all kinds of thoughts, not all of which were very positive. I quickly realized that many of my thoughts were negative, directed towards myself, that you can't handle this, you are a failure, you got sick, you're not strong enough, you don't have what it takes, you should count your losses now and get out while you can and go back to where it's safe and where you know how to take care of yourself and not get sick. Obviously, this vocation isn't for you. And so all these negative thoughts visited me night after night. And I have to admit, it was very, very difficult those first few nights. And I share this because it's interesting how sometimes we might be very quick to want to overlook or push away these moments of despair or doubt and fear. And yet it became a turning point for me because it was when I was able to enter into and not push away that experience of doubt, uncertainty, and negativity, but my prayer shifted and I was able to invite God into that experience and say, God, reveal yourself to me in the midst of this pain. reveal to me the direction you want me to go. Now that I've kind of, I met a wall of my own pride, of my own arrogance, of my own insistence that I knew how to do things. No one needs to tell me. And I met this wall, and it broke open something in me that I think then and until now has invited me more consistently to surrender myself in trust to God and let God take the lead, and kind of get in the back seat with, God as the pilot of my ship. And so that turning point led to me saying, well, most missionaries I know get sick at some point. In fact, most people I know, whether they claim to be missionaries or priests or sisters or lay people, everyone gets sick at some point. We are mortal beings. We are limited. We are fragile. And so don't make it the end of the world because you got sick. You could have gotten sick at home. You happened to get sick in the Philippines. But you were told how to avoid getting sick. And if you follow some of those simple practices, maybe you'll be able to take better care of yourself. And would you believe, Andrew, I made a decision in that moment that I would stay in the Philippines, number one. Number two, that I would stay in that particular mission. And number three, that I would go back to the activity of climbing mountains and visiting and working with and amongst the Hmong people with a towel over my back, prepared to change my clothes when I arrived at the top of the mountain. And guess what? I didn't get sick anymore. Since that time forward has been a real turning point for me to say that my vocation may be tested. There will be difficult times. There may be times of doubt and uncertainty. But I don't need to sweep those under the carpet. Those may be actually the times where God sees me the most vulnerable, the most open, and the most likely to be able to surrender myself yet again in trust. And that can lead me forward.
Again, we say thank you to Father Adam MacDonald for his wonderful share these past 2 weeks. Just the insight that you've been able to share with us as it pertains to life, faith, ministry. We can't thank you enough, and we look forward every time we're able to have you here at Christ Over Coffee. If you are new to the broadcast today, we want to give you a little bit of information before you go. If you feel like God is calling you to religious life, or you've heard something in this message that has stirred up your heart and has you thinking, is there something that God has for me? We want you to give us a call today at 847-441-0126. Also, please visit our website to get even more information about the Holy Spirit Missionary Sisters. You can find us online at www.SSpS-usa.org. Please also consider following us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can find us at these various locations down below me. All we ask is that you would like, comment, and share the wonderful messages and inspirational quotes that we send out each and every week. It's been a blast as always having you here with us. And until next time, remember, we're going to be walking this life one sip at a time. We thank you all so much for joining us today. May God bless you and your families. Take care, and may you have an awesome weekend. Bye-bye.